Welcome to another in the series of ProQyz demonstrations, and today's video we will be looking at how to create a speaking quiz in ProQyz. So here is my ProQyz dashboard. Let me start first by having a look at a speaking test to see what we're going to produce today. So this is an example of a speaking test. It actually starts with an instruction screen like this and then goes through to testing the microphone. I'm going to skip that part. And then it goes into the different parts. So each part has an overall timer and it has some instructions, and then it has the question and time to think. Okay, the default time to think is 5 seconds. So without any further ado, let's get back into how to create a speaking quiz in ProQyz. So here we are back to my dashboard, and I just go into new quiz and I'm going to select speaking here and a title, test for speaking. I'm not going to put a description in here, you can do that. And here you'll see we've got the basic edit, the basic front page, the sections and the questions. Now just going back to basic edit, shared down here. If you click shared, it means you share your test with the quiz library. I'm not going to do that because this is just a test, but you may want to do that. So what do we do first of all? We need to create some sections, some different parts. So you can either do that here or here. And what we're going to do is add a section. So in IELTS, for example, we have 3 parts. So just looking at IELTS, I'm going to have a part 1 section. And here I'm going to add the section instructions. Now, as with some of the other quizzes we've done here, the videos, demonstrations, I've used ChatGPT to create a new quiz, and I'm just going to use that today as well. So in ChatGPT, I've just asked it to create a 3-part speaking test with instructions. So you may or may not want to do this. I'm just showing you how easy it is to create a quiz and some instructions. You can format this using the editor if you like, and you can also add some sample answers. So this would be sample answers for part 1. So let's go ahead and do that. I did that in my, I asked ChatGPT to do that in my prompt. So I've got the questions here, and I've got some sample answers here. So let's just copy and paste those into the sample answer box. And these will appear to the students once they've submitted their work. Now, time. Section time for questions. So this is how long for part, in this case, part 1. Now, part 1 in IELTS is normally 4 to 5 minutes. So let's put down here 5 minutes. And here is the thinking time. Now, you saw that before. This is the time allowed before the question starts for students to think. Now, in part 1 and part 3, we don't need to worry about this. We can just use the default, which is 5 seconds. So let me go ahead and add that section. So I've got part 1 here. Let's add the part 2 section. Part 2, you'll know for IELTS, part 2 is a long turn. It's where the students have to speak for a longer time, for 2 minutes. So let's put those instructions in. Here, section instructions, tells the students what's going to happen. And let's put some sample answers in again. So I've got my question here, but I've got a sample answer down there. So let's just copy and paste that and put it into my sample answer Again, this is a nice feature to have for students. Now, time taken for this part 2 is 2 minutes. Okay, so the students must speak for 2 minutes in this section, and they are allowed 1 minute to prepare their answer. So time to think in seconds. So let's just put 60 seconds in there. Okay, so part 2 is a little different. 60 seconds to think about their answer, and then 2 minutes to give their answer. Let's add that. And then on to part 3 of the IELTS. And let's again look for the instructions for part 3, 4 to 5 minutes. This is the part in the IELTS test where students must go beyond their own experience and discuss things in more general terms. Sample answer, yes, let's put some sample answers in. Just for completeness. And time taken for this part, for part 3, again, it's 4 to 5 minutes normally. So let's make that 5 minutes. And time to think, again, there's no time specifically to think in this, so let's just leave that blank, and it will be a 5-second default time to think. So there I've got my 3 parts for my speaking test. Of course, you can add as few or as many parts or sections as you like. So let's go in and add some questions for this. Here I choose a section, so I'm going to add some questions for part 1. And add a question, and the question goes here and any instructions go below it. So the students will see the question first and then any other optional instructions. So let's have a look at our part 1 question. Go back up here. Here's a part 1 question. Can you tell me about your hometown? I'll put that in there. I don't think that needs any other instructions. Question time to think, you can add that, but the default is 5 seconds. So let me just leave that. And let me add another question here. Add question, and so on. So I've got my part 1, I've got my 2 questions. Now let's go back here and let's add some questions, or a question for part 2. In IELTS we have 1 question for part 2. Make sure we're in the right part 2, add a question. And here we have a question, and normally we give the students a card with some more information on it. So I'm going to use this part in this case. So let me go down to part 2. I've got my long turn. I've got here the question, and I've got here the extra information. So let me just copy all of that for ease, and let me put it in here. And my question is really just this part. Describe a memorable holiday you had, and you should say. So this part, again, you can do some more formatting with this. Maybe you want to change the text size or the font size. There's lots of things you can do here if you want to make it look nice. And as you saw from the beginning when we introduced the part, the time here is 60 seconds for thinking. Okay, so the students are allowed to think for 60 seconds before they start to answer the question. I'll add that question. Now part 2 only has 1 question in IELTS, so that's me done for this. Now let's have a look at part 3. And let's add a question for part 3. Again, we'll go back to our source for part 3. Okay, what are the benefits of taking a holiday? That doesn't need any instructions. Part 3 is more about general ideas rather than personal ideas. Time to think is 0. There's no preparation time for this. So we'll just add that question. And let's add another question. How do you think tourism affects local communities? Add the question. No need for instructions. Add that. And that's basically it. You can carry on adding questions, you can carry on adding sections, changing the time for all of them. So let's just go back to the ProQyz main page, test for speaking. What does that look like, what we've just made? Well, here are the general instructions, and the students will go test their microphone. We'll skip that part. And here you'll see part 1, the general instructions. And here, can you tell me about your hometown? It's recording. We're counting down from 5 minutes. Question 2, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? Recording the answer. And then that part is finished. So students then have the option to review that part or start again if they want to. Next part, part 2, explanation about part 2. Question, and here we had the more detailed, the optional instructions, okay? And it says here, time to think. We're counting down from 1 minute to 0 for thinking time, and you have 2 minutes to speak. So I can wait for a minute, or I can just go ahead and start speaking now. I can review part 2, and then I can go on to do part 3 in the same way. Again, you can see it's very, very quick and easy to create a speaking test with multiple sections and multiple questions. So have a go at that. Hope you enjoy using that, and see you in the next video.